Jonah noticed the exit sign first. Because it wasn't T on the GPS, and it wasn't T on the map he remembered memorizing before the drive. And yet there it was, glowing a dull yellow through the rain. Exit 117B. Letters flickering like they were struggling to stay real. And Jonah told himself it was just exhaustion, because he had been driving for hours alone. The highway empty in a way that felt wrong. No headlights ahead, none behind, just endless dark road and the steady hum of tires on wet asphalt. And when the radio cut to static all at once, Jonah felt the first real wave of fear crawl up his spine. Not sharp fear, but heavy fear. The kind that presses down on your chest and makes breathing feel like work. And then the voice came through the static, soft and calm, telling him he looked tired and that the exit ahead was a shortcut. Jonah laughed nervously and turned the radio off, but the exit sign grew brighter as he got closer, the road markings subtly bending toward it like they were guiding him. And without fully deciding to, Jonah felt his hands turn the wheel, the car drifting off the highway and onto the exit ramp. The moment the tires crossed onto the new road, the world seemed to shrink, the sky lowering, the darkness thickening, and the highway vanished behind him like it had never existed. Jonah tried to turn around, but the road had narrowed into a single lane with tall trees pressing close on both sides, their branches scraping the car like fingers testing glass. His phone lost signal instantly, the GPS spinning uselessly, showing him nowhere at all. And that was when Jonah realized the silence was complete. No insects, no wind, not even the sound of rain anymore, just the engine and his own breathing. The road sloped downward slowly, leading him into a small cluster of buildings that appeared out of nowhere. Old gas station, closed diner, a motel with dark windows. All of it looking abandoned, but somehow expectant, like it had been waiting. Jonah pulled over near the gas station, his headlights illuminating pumps that were rusted and bent like they had been chewed on. The air outside felt colder than it should have, sharp and dry. And when Jonah stepped out of the car, the smell hit him. Not rot exactly, but something old and trapped, like a room that had never been opened. He heard movement behind the diner, slow footsteps dragging slightly, and a shape passed between the buildings. Too tall to be an animal, too wrong to be a person. Jonah got back into the car fast, hands shaking as he tried to start the engine. But the car only clicked, the dashboard lights flickering like the exit sign had. And then the radio turned on by itself, the same calm voice returning, thanking him for stopping, saying travelers were rare now. Saying the highway took too much away, Jonah shouted that he just wanted to leave. But the voice sounded almost amused, telling him that everyone said that at first. The headlights dimmed and then went out completely, plunging the station into darkness. And in that darkness, Jonah heard more footsteps now, several of them, circling slowly, and faint knocking began on the car. Gentle at first, like someone testing if he was home. Jonah locked the doors, even though he knew it wouldn't matter, his breath fogging the windows as shapes pressed close, outlines barely visible, faces forming and unforming in the glass, mouths moving in time with the voice on the radio, telling him the exit wasn't a mistake, telling him the highway was a lie, telling him this place kept what wandered too far. And as the knocking grew louder and the car finally went silent, engine dead, lights gone, Jonah understood the truth settling deep in his bones. The worst mistake wasn't stopping. It was believing the exit was meant to lead somewhere else. Jonah didn't know how long he sat frozen in the dark car after the knocking stopped. But when silence finally returned, it felt heavier than the noise, like the air itself was holding its breath. And that scared him more than the voices had, because silence meant waiting, and whatever waited out there felt patient. Jonah forced himself to unlock the door and step outside, telling himself staying in the car was worse, telling himself movement meant control. But the moment his feet touched the ground, the road beneath him felt wrong. Not solid like asphalt, but slightly soft, like packed dirt pretending to be road. His headlights flickered back on suddenly, lighting up the town again. And that's when he noticed something he hadn't before. The buildings weren't just abandoned. They were watching. The motel windows reflected his light, even though there was nothing inside to reflect, like eyes opening and closing. Jonah walked toward the diner because it felt safer to face one place instead of standing in the open. The bell above the door rang when he pushed it open, loud and cheerful, completely out of place. Inside the diner, everything was frozen in time. Plates still on tables, coffee cups half full but bone dry, chairs slightly pulled back like people had just stood up and vanished. Jonah called out, his voice echoing too much for such a small room. And when no one answered, he felt that familiar heavy fear settle deeper. He noticed the smell again, stronger here, old and closed in, like memories sealed too tight. He walked behind the counter and saw a guest book lying open, pages filled with names written in different styles, some neat, some frantic, some scratched so hard the paper tore. Jonah flipped through and felt his stomach drop when he saw dates spanning decades with no gaps. Every year, every month, always more names, and at the very end, written faintly in pencil like it had been added recently, was his own name. Jonah slammed the book shut and backed away. Knocking into a chair, the sound echoed and was answered immediately by movement outside, slow and deliberate. Footsteps dragging across the road toward the diner. Jonah ran for the back door, but it was gone. Just a solid wall where it should have been. He spun around as the front door creaked open, and something stepped inside. Shaped like a person, but empty, like someone carved out the idea of a man and forgot to fill it in. Its face was smooth, no eyes, no mouth, but Jonah could feel it smiling. The radio voice came from everywhere at once now, welcoming him properly, telling him this town existed between exits, built from travelers who got tired, who listened, who believed there was an easier way. Jonah shouted that he didn't belong there, that he would leave. And the thing tilted its head, almost curious, and raised a hand. The diner lights flickered, and suddenly Jonah wasn't alone. Shapes filled the booths, sitting quietly, staring at him with faces that didn't stay the same for more than a second. Sometimes old, sometimes young, sometimes familiar enough to hurt. Jonah recognized bits of himself in them, his eyes, his posture, his fear, and he realized with horror that the town didn't just trap people, it copied them, kept them, learned from them. The thing stepped closer and Jonah ran past it, bursting out of the diner and sprinting toward the motel, the ground pulsing faintly beneath his feet like a slow heartbeat. The motel door opened easily, too easily, and inside the hallway stretched longer than it should have, doors lining both sides, each one slightly open. Whispering sounds slipping through the cracks. Jonah passed one door and heard his own voice inside begging to be let go. Another door held the sound of the highway, cars rushing past, freedom close enough to taste. He stopped at the end of the hall where a single door stood closed, a sign hanging crookedly that read Room 117. His chest tightened, the same number as the exit. Jonah pushed the door open and found himself standing back on the highway, his car parked safely on the shoulder, headlights on, rain falling normally, the radio playing music, everything perfect. Relief flooded him so fast he almost cried. He climbed into the driver's seat, laughing shakily, telling himself it was over. But when he checked the mirror, he saw the motel hallway stretching behind him instead of the road, and the radio voice whispered softly that leaving was always the hardest part. The car began to roll forward on its own, not onto the highway but deeper into darkness, and Jonah screamed as the world folded back in on itself, the town breathing him in once more.